I used to think coffee was one of those things you didn't need to worry about. I was wrong. It turns out that drinking too much coffee every day can end up harming your body and potentially make you addicted for life. This is why today I am going to show you the addictive effects of caffeine, while also showing you how you can change this so that you have control over the coffee, rather than the coffee having control over you. Before I begin, I'm not saying coffee is bad for you. Far from it. The benefits of the caffeine in coffee are well known. Its ability to increase alertness, energy, and concentration levels is incredibly impressive. Whether you like coffee because of the rich aroma, the warmth of the mug in your hands, or the jolt you get after that first sip, coffee in the morning is almost like a routine for thousands of people. But when coffee is not consumed in moderation, it starts becoming a problem. Ultimately, the caffeine in coffee is a drug, and just like any other drug, you can become addicted to it. Studies show that many coffee drinkers insist that they can't function until they have had their morning cup of coffee. This is when the first signs of coffee and caffeine addiction start to creep in. So, how does caffeine actually work? Caffeine is a stimulant, which helps to increase the activity in your brain and nervous system. Studies show that at least 80% of adults drink enough caffeine every day for it to have an impact on the brain. Consuming caffeine usually leads to increased alertness, focus, and cognitive performance. Many people find it easier to tackle their day-to-day tasks or tasks that require concentration after consuming caffeine. The pick-me-up feeling that you get from caffeine is due to the caffeine blocking the adenosine receptors in your body. Adenosine is the hormone that causes you to feel tired. As the day passes, the brain releases more and more adenosine, which is like a signal to your body to slow down the nerve cell activity. But what has adenosine got to do with caffeine? Well, caffeine has a similar structure to the adenosine hormone. So instead of the adenosine getting attached to the receptors, caffeine attaches itself to it instead. The caffeine blocks adenosine's ability to slow nerve activity and ends up having the opposite effect as it increases nerve activity, leaving the drinker more stimulated, alert, and energetic. Not getting tired by drinking coffee sounds like a good thing, right? Well, yes, but actually no, because your body ends up building a tolerance to it. Studies show that with each passing drink, your brain's chemistry and physical characteristics change, because the brain cells grow more adenosine receptors to try and keep things in check and maintain an equilibrium. Because of these receptors, a higher amount of coffee needs to be consumed every time to bypass the body's receptors and feel the energizing effect of caffeine. Before you know it, the cups of coffee you drink have significantly increased, and coffee addiction has slowly crept up on you. But is coffee addiction really that serious? The short answer is yes, because it can affect your motivation levels. Caffeine affects the brain's reward system, which triggers the release of a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain that helps to activate pleasure. Don't get me wrong, the secretion of dopamine is a good thing. Dopamine plays an important role in the feeling of satisfaction, motivation, and happiness, and also plays a crucial role in controlling your memory, mood, sleep, learning, concentration, and movement. Think of dopamine as a reward system. Every time you feel good because you achieved something or did something fun, it's because of the dopamine in your brain. But there is a dark side to this. Because it acts as a reward, people might slowly start to crave the good feelings that dopamine can provide and slowly become addicted to it. This idea of addiction and dopamine ties in nicely with the point I'm making about how excess caffeine can impact your motivation. I mentioned earlier about how caffeine impacts the adenosine levels in your body. That isn't the only thing it does. While caffeine does affect adenosine, it also simultaneously manipulates the dopamine production in your body to make you feel good. Coffee helps to increase the levels of dopamine in your body in the short term, which is why drinking a small cup of coffee in the morning acts as a pick-me-up and helps to make the drinker feel good. But in the long run, this isn't going to help your body. The elevated levels of dopamine and adrenaline from the initial cup of coffee end up becoming the new norm, which makes people get used to the elevated dopamine levels. And when the elevated levels of dopamine and adrenaline do wear off, this ends up leading to even more fatigue and possibly even depression. Do you ever notice how after a couple of hours of drinking, you end up feeling even more tired? This is not a coincidence. This is called a caffeine crash. Remember when I mentioned that caffeine has a similar shape to adenosine and attaches itself to adenosine receptors to stop you from getting tired? Well, when the effects of caffeine do wear off, all of the free adenosine from earlier that was previously unable to bind will now rapidly bind to their receptors, which is why, about 2 to 3 hours after a cup of coffee is consumed, most people feel sluggish, drowsy, and tired. Your energy levels drop as the day passes anyway, but caffeine crashes usually feel a lot more exhausting than general tiredness, because not only does the effect of caffeine stop, but all of the adenosine affects you at the same time. It's like a wave of energy loss gets dropped on you. Having said all that, if caffeine is consumed moderately, it is still quite beneficial for your body. So, how can you reduce the dependence that you've built up on coffee and prevent addiction? That is what I am going to talk about in the next section of the video. But before getting into that, I would very much appreciate it if you could drop a like on this video and subscribe to this channel to see more content on topics that will improve your physical and mental health. Thank you. The first way to quit any addiction is awareness. Studies show that no more than 400 milligrams of caffeine should be consumed every day. This equates to about 3 to 4 cups of coffee. The reason I am saying awareness is crucial is because if you are not aware that you are in a rut, how will you fix your addictive habits? The book Atomic Habits by James Clear agrees with this notion, as it states that the first step to changing bad habits is to be on the lookout for them. However, if you find yourself consuming more than 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day, at least you are now aware that you have to start consuming less. This brings me to the second method, the 90-minute rule. The 90-minute rule states that waiting 90 minutes after waking up to drink your first sip of coffee leads to higher energy levels, lower levels of drowsiness, and a better quality of sleep. When you wake up, your body usually produces cortisol, which is a part of the natural circadian rhythm. Waiting 90 minutes will reduce the dependence on caffeine and allow the body to rely more on its natural mechanism to wake you up. This will help prevent the extreme caffeine crashes you feel and boost productivity levels. This brings me to the third way to reduce caffeine addiction. Replace it with an alternative. There's a reason I saved this step till the very end, because this change will be the most drastic change of them all. Research shows that drinking herbal coffee by roasting different parts of the plant is a healthier alternative to coffee. However, I recommend switching from traditional coffee to herbal coffee in a gradual way. Doing this too quickly will result in the change being temporary and not being permanent. So now that you know about the ways drinking too much coffee is doing more harm for you than good, you need to ensure that you replace the other bad habits and triggers that make you reach for a cup of coffee as well. Research shows that a lot of people often consume their morning coffee with a cigarette. While caffeine is addictive, it's nowhere near as addictive as nicotine, so it is essential that you don't smoke. Do you know how smoking is slowly killing you? To learn more about this, press here on the screen to watch.